Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Many of you have reached out saying, hey, when are we finally going to get started on party member builds? And guess what? Today is the day. I am happy to kick things off with Argenta, one of my favorite party members in the overall game, and definitely someone who's going to be a mainstay in my Imperialist run. So she automatically comes with the first 3 levels. So at level 1, with her marksman archetype, she's going to have run and gun, which allows you to attack twice in one turn instead of just once, while also getting some bonus movement points that is going to scale with your agility bonus. This ability is absolutely incredible, allows her to pump out a ton of damage, and while it's not important to this build, it is worth noting that this works with psyker range powers as well, or psyker attacks in general as well. So just definitely nice for any damage dealing character to have. Next, at level 2, she's automatically going to come with a bonus in demolition. I highly recommend that you make that the main skill that she focuses on. She's going to raise agility quite a bit, which is going to raise demolition as well. And demolition is absolutely one of the skills you want to make sure your team has covered. Then at level 3, she automatically gets revel in slaughter. And this is going to be triggered once she has killed 3 enemies. You have to spend 1 action point in order to activate this, but it's going to give her a bonus in ballistic skill, a bonus in critical damage, and critical hit chance that scales with her agility bonus as well. So just a huge increase in the damage output that she has. And there will be many fights where you're going to be facing more than 20 enemies. So her killing 3 enemies, not a big deal at all. So this is definitely something nice to have in her arsenal. And then at level 4, she's going to automatically get Firearm Mastery, which in my opinion is the best heroic act in the game. It's going to allow her to make a number of extra attacks equal to her weapon's rate of fire. So that's very important to note here. She's really going to benefit from holding a weapon with a high rate of fire, which is why honestly I prefer bolters over flame weapons. Obviously it's really cool having a sister of battle who's holding a flame weapon and burning down heretics and all that good stuff, but I just think bolters work better for her. I think really she's most effective with a bolter in her hand. So you're going to get a ton of extra attacks, and these attacks do not spend action points. And then until the end of your turn, the first attack against each new enemy automatically scores a critical hit, and the cherry on top, you're going to immediately reload your weapon when you use this. So just all the way around, it allows her to mow down enemies in a fight. It could completely change a battle. So definitely, you're going to be glad that she has this. Now, level 4 is also the first time you're going to be able to choose a talent for her, and I would start with enough bullets for everyone. This is going to cause that second attack action that oftentimes you'll be able to get from run and gun to deal additional damage that scales with your agility bonus. And once again, agility is something that you're going to be raising sky high. Now, this damage is only triggered against enemies that have not suffered damage from you during that turn, but once again, oftentimes you're going to be facing 20 enemies or more. So attacking an enemy that you haven't damaged before is not going to be difficult at all. And you're going to do a ton of damage against them. So definitely this is nice to pick up. Next up will be your first time to be able to increase a characteristic. I would highly recommend you start with ballistic skill. It's going to help ensure that Argenta is able to hit regularly, and just as importantly, she's going to critically hit on a very regular basis. So all the way around, you want to focus on ballistic skill as the primary characteristic. Secondary characteristic is definitely agility. Marksman has a lot of abilities that interact with agility, as you've already seen. And Argenta is going to use dodge as her main defensive mechanic. So both offensively and defensively, focusing on agility is really going to help you. Your third primary characteristic is actually willpower. She's going to get a couple of things that interact with willpower very well. And I think it's worth investing in that area more than perception. So I would focus there. You're also going to get another talent, and I would take Unpredictable, which allows your critical hit chance to scale with your agility bonus, and that bonus is doubled against enemies which you are protected from by cover, which will probably happen all the time, so definitely go ahead and pick this up. The next level, you're going to want to go ahead and take Rapid Fire. Your soldier's next burst attack will have its rate of fire doubled, but deal 25% less damage. This is a massive damage boost for Argenta because the burst attacks for bolters are extremely powerful, whether you're facing a group of enemies or just one enemy. So you are going to trigger this all the time. It's definitely something you want to have in your arsenal. At the next level, you can no longer increase ballistic skills, so remember, start increasing agility. In addition, this will be the first time you can choose a common talent. So in all the other talent screens we've seen, we were able to have archetype talents that we could select, but now you only have the common talents and the talents from your origin. So in this list, I would definitely take Bolt Weapon Expert. Even though bolters are incredible, one disadvantage that they have is they don't have as much armor penetration as some of the other weapon options that you could potentially use. So Bolt Weapon Expert is really, really going to help you. For your next talent, pick up Unfaltering Fire. So it's going to change Rapid Fire to no longer reduce the amount of damage that you're able to do. Once again, this is a huge damage increase for you. You should be triggering Rapid Fire and using burst attacks pretty much constantly. So ensuring that the damage of those attacks is not reduced is really, really going to help you. And then next, you're able to choose an upgrade for your heroic act. I would start with the third one, which is going to make your attacks 20% harder to dodge and give your ranged attacks an additional 10% armor penetration until the end of combat. Both of those help you tremendously. This is nice to have. And then you get another talent. I would take Rapid Reload. So the one disadvantage of using a ton of burst attacks all the time is that it churns through ammo extremely quickly. So you're going to need to reload a lot. Rapid Reload is going to cause your first reload to not cost any action points, and then all reloads after that will reduce the amount of action points you have to spend by 2. This is absolutely critical to her build, so pick it up. And then for our last ability, I would take Dash. This allows you to move 3 cells in any direction, even through enemies, but not through cover. And this movement does not provoke an attack of opportunity. Basically, you want to use this when enemies close into melee distance. Argenta's bolter cannot use its attacks if an enemy is standing right in front of you. Also at this level, you're no longer going to be able to increase demolition. So I would move over to Medikai. On my team, Abelard is handling athletics. Cassia is constantly increasing perception, so she's handling awareness. And my main character is going to use an item that will allow fellowship to count for Lore Imperium. So he's handling Lore Imperium checks. So I don't need her to cover any of those. On your team, it might be different. And you definitely want all of those skills covered. So you might need to use Argenta for it. But for me, it makes complete sense for her to just focus on Medikai instead, which is going to make her a little bit more self-sufficient in those cases when she needs to be able to heal herself. On the next level, you can no longer increase agility or ballistic skills, so switch over to willpower. And then for your common talent, I would take Nimble. It's going to give her a 10% bonus to dodge. And once again, dodge is her main defensive mechanic. Speaking of dodge being her main defensive mechanic, the next talent that you should take is Second Skin. This will cause medium armor to not reduce her dodge. Very, very important defensively for her, and it'll ensure that you can always use the best medium armor available. And then for your common talent, I would choose Grenadier. This will cause the first grenade used in combat to not spend AP, and it does not count towards the attack limit that turn. Argenta is more of a mid-range fighter a lot of times, especially since you need to move around to get her burst attack in the best angle. So oftentimes she'll be close enough where using a grenade is going to make a whole lot of sense, and this will be very handy to have. For the next common talent, I would choose the Emperor Protects. So this is going to give her a chance equal to her willpower bonus to ignore any enemy attack. So right now, of course, that bonus is only 3. So it's only a 3% chance, not all that impressive, but over time, little by little, you're going to continue increasing willpower, and even a small chance to ignore an enemy attack is really, really nice. So you might as well go ahead and pick this up. Next is your last upgrade for your heroic act. I would go ahead and take the second option, which is going to increase your rate of fire by 30% until the end of combat. Once again, this is a significant damage boost that is going to make your burst attacks even more powerful. And that completes all of the upgrades for the marksman class. If you didn't understand anything that I went over, or you missed some things in between, there is a written spreadsheet in the description below that walks through all of the different options that I've taken. And there are a couple of links in the description for my videos walking through all the marksman mechanics and the Arch-Militant mechanics, which we're going to go over next. All right, so I recommend personally that you take Argenta into Arch-Militant. You could make her a bounty hunter as well, and she is very, very effective in that role, but I think Arch-Militant just takes things to another level. It's going to kick off with giving you versatility, which is a buff that is triggered when you use different types of attacks. So the attacks that count here are single shot, single melee attack, area shot, or a burst shot. And obviously with your bolter, you're going to switch between burst shots and single shots. You do still use single shots on a regular basis because oftentimes it's going to make more sense to use them against far away enemies. So switching back and forth is not a big deal at all. And every time you do this, you're going to gain a +5 bonus to weapon and ballistic skill for every stack that you have of this bonus. And once you reach 4 more stacks, you're going to deal additional damage equal to half of the bonus that is largest for you. So just all the way around, this is going to be great for Argenta to have and really help pump up her damage. So the first ability you want to pick up is Devastating Attack. This is going to force enemies to pass a toughness resistance test with a penalty to that test equal to your ballistic skill bonus. And if they fail, the enemy will be knocked prone because you're using bolters, and bolters deliver impact damage. So usually I kind of don't like this, but in this particular situation, because of the type of weapon you're using, it's going to make a lot of sense. And it's basically going to allow you to disable enemies who have really, really nasty effects that you want to make sure they cannot use. Great to have. Next, we're going to take Exploit Weakness. Anytime you're attacking an enemy that has had their armor reduced by one of your allies, you're going to deal an additional 10% damage. And when you attack enemies that have had their deflection reduced by any of the effects applied by your allies, you're going to deal an additional 2 damage. We're going to be on a team with Pascal. He's always going to be reducing the armor of enemies left and right. So this is a no-brainer. Definitely pick it up. And then we're going to get the Heroic Act Steady Superiority, which is going to allow you until the end of combat to make 1 additional attack per turn. And the first attack after using this ability in each turn afterwards costs 0 action points. This is definitely not as good as the heroic act you get from being a marksman, but it still has its uses, and we'll get into that when we look at the upgrades. You're also going to get 1 additional action point, which is huge. This is really, really going to help your action economy, because the way Rogue Trader works, you need to stack up buffs and debuffs and then attack. So it's not like every turn you just spend 2 action points to attack and then you just move on. Like, no, there's usually 2 or 3 things you need to do first before you attack, and so the additional action point is going to make you really, really more powerful. Your ability to increase characteristics has now been completely refreshed, so we can go back to increasing ballistic skill. For your next talent, I would pick up Always Ready, which is going to allow you to begin combat with 2 stacks of versatility. I'll explain a bit why that is so helpful. Next up, you could choose another ability, and I would take Wildfire. This is going to cause your next attack to cost 0 action points, and it will not count towards the attack limit this turn. And it will grant a stack of versatility even if the attack type is the same as the last attack type. Now, at first, this will cost 3 action points. However, the cost of this ability is reduced by 1 for every 4 stacks of versatility. So by taking that last talent and starting your turn with 2 stacks of versatility, you'll easily be able to switch back and forth and get a couple of more stacks, and then you can use Wildfire to get an additional attack on your very first turn. So this is basically a huge way to charge right out of the gates and do a ton of damage to all the enemies around you. For your next common talent, I would choose Shield of Faith, and this is going to give you bonus armor against attacks of daemons and warp damage that's going to scale with your willpower bonus, and your resolve is going to be permanently increased by half of your willpower bonus. By now, you're going to be getting further into Act 2. In fact, you might almost be into Act 3. So you're going to be facing a lot more warp damage and a lot more daemons. And this is going to be very, very useful to have. Your ability to increase skills is also refreshed. So go ahead and go back to Demolition. And then next up, we're going to take Flash Fire. The cost of Wildfire is reduced by 1 action point for every 3 stacks of versatility instead of 4. So it's going to make it even easier for us to activate it. Argenta should be pumping out damage left and right. Next level, you can no longer increase weapon skills. So again, switch over to agility. And then for your next common talent, I would choose No Heresy. This is going to completely plummet her rank in Lore Xenos and Lore Warp, but she doesn't care about either one of those stats, so it's irrelevant. She's going to gain a 10% increase to critical hit chance and armor against Xenos or demonic creatures. Absolutely, this is going to help her a great deal, so go ahead and pick it up. For the next talent, pick up Contempt for the Weak, which is going to give you a 20% increase to critical damage against targets that are stunned, prone, or blinded. Your devastating attack is going to prone enemies, and oftentimes you're going to use that against bosses or priority targets. And I have Cassie on my team who stuns enemies on a regular basis. So we should be able to trigger this all the time. And then next you get your first upgrade of your heroic act, and I will go with the 4th option, which allows you to use both this heroic act and the one from warrior or soldier, in this case it would be soldier, in the same combat. So usually most characters, they can only use 1 heroic act every fight, but you're going to be able to use 2. Very, very effective. And again, the soldier option is one of the best in the game, so you really want to have this. Next on the list, I would take Focal Point, which is going to allow you to deal 15% damage to targets that have a priority target, regardless of whether it's you or someone else. So for most of the game, I'll be using Abelard, who's absolutely going to draw enemy attention. And then even when I ditch Abelard, I'll be using Ulfar essentially as my tank, and he's going to be running out in front and drawing as many people to him as possible. So she should be able to attack enemies that have a priority target all the time, and this will be a nice damage boost. Next, you can no longer increase agility, so again, switch over to willpower. And for your next common talent, take It Will Not Die, which increases your wounds by half of your character level. Nice little bonus by this point in the game. And then for your last ability, I would take Confident Approach. Having Confident Approach will help Argenta when she's facing enemies who she's having trouble getting through their defenses. It's going to provide an increase to dodge reduction and parry reduction, and ignore 5% of enemy cover for every stack of versatility that you have, but you lose the usual bonuses of versatility, right? So usually we wouldn't want to do this, but again, some bosses are major enemies, or maybe Pascal has went down, and so he's not around to strip the defenses. In those situations, it's going to be nice to be able to switch this on and hopefully penetrate the defenses of a tough boss. For your next talent, I would take Preferred Target, which is going to give you an increase of 10% critical hit chance against enemies who have had their dodge reduced by your allies. Again, we're going to have Pascal. He will absolutely handle this. And when they've had their parry reduced, you'll deal additional 20% critical damage. And once again, Pascal will be doing that all the time. Definitely pick this up. The next level, you can't increase demolition anymore, so once again, switch over to Metakai. For your next talent, I would take Critical Versatility, which is going to allow you to gain a 3% bonus to critical damage for every stack of versatility. And you keep this even when you're using Confident Approach. Obviously, that's a really nice bonus to your damage. So next up, you get to choose another common talent. From my perspective, you've taken all of the ones that are really critical to this build. And so you can focus on ensuring she doesn't fail any checks. So I would take Base Skill Demolition, which is going to increase your demolition rank by 7. And then finally, you get to add another upgrade to your Heroic Act. I'd take the second option, which is going to cause you until the end of combat to gain a stacking 2% bonus to critical hit chance with every attack. Once again, very nice to have. So that ends all of your selections for Marksman and Arch-Militant. By now, you should be an absolute monster. So when you get to Exemplar, the world is really your oyster. It's listed out in the spreadsheet, all of the options that I would probably take here, but really you can't go wrong. Do whatever you like, increase yourself however you like, and you'll still be able to tear things up as long as you follow the guide up to this point. I will mention though that I feel like you should start with Death Dealer. This is going to trigger every round after Argenta kills the first enemy, and it's going to allow her to immediately attack another enemy with a single attack that's going to deal 30% base damage along with a 10% increase to the damage for every difficulty tier of that enemy who was killed. So obviously, if you started out killing a boss, you're going to still do a ton of damage to another character. This is just going to ensure more people around her die, and I think it's just a no-brainer for her build. All right, and then finally, I thought some of you might want to go over the gear options that I put on her. This is definitely not optimized. There's new gear that's in the game since the time of the beta, and I ran into a bug where I was not able to use her at all in Act 3. So I'm pretty sure most of this is based on what's available at the end of Act 2. So you should definitely be able to get more optimized equipment for it, but it gives you an idea of what you should be going for. So for her helmet, I've got the Gunslinger's helmet, which is going to give her a percentage bonus to damage equal to twice her rate of fire. Again, her rate of fire should be massive most of the time, so this is really nice. She's just got some regular old armor. I didn't really find good armor for her. For the first ring, if a wearer didn't spend movement points during their turn, which she's able to stay in the same place all the time, she gets a plus 10 bonus to all characteristics in the next turn. Very, very nice for her. And then in the other ring, this is just kind of throwaway first aid manual. So it allows her to use med kits with one action point less, which again, she shouldn't be using med kits all the time anyway, but I didn't find other good rings for her. For the necklace, she gets Blessed Bolter Casing, which allows single attacks with bolter weapons to automatically hit the target, which is huge for her. That's really, really going to help to ensure she's pumping out a nice amount of damage. For the gloves, she gets a plus 10 bonus to ballistic skill and a 25% increase to critical damage, which again is massive. Really, really nice. For the cape, she decreases all incoming damage except direct damage by a percentage amount equal to 1 plus however many versatility stacks she has. So the more versatility she's stacking, the more defensive she becomes. Very nice. And then for the boots, at the start of her turn, she gains 20% dodge until the end of the round. And you see her dodge is already 100%. And this is just going to help her be more defensive and ensure that enemies cannot get through to her. And then, of course, the key component of the build is going to be the Precise Bolter, doing up to 21 damage, 15% armor penetration, an additional 10% hit chance. It's got a rate of fire of 4, range of 12, so it can really, really hit far out enemies, and max ammo 16. So this was the best bolter I was able to find for her in my game. I definitely felt like there weren't enough bolters in the game, so I'm hoping in the full release that's something that has changed, because I felt like I was using the same bolter for long stretches of time while other characters around me were able to switch things in and out. At first, I had a sniper rifle as her secondary weapon to help ensure when I was dealing with enemies that are just way outside the range of the bolter, I had something I could use to try to hit them. But over time, you get ways to give her buffs. In fact, that we went over in my last build video to make sure that even when holding a bolter, she can hit enemies as far as needed. So over time, I really don't use this at all. And then the rest is just med kits and grenades. So hopefully that helps you figure out how to build Argenta and you found this information useful. If not, there's the written guide and the links to my other build videos or my other mechanics videos that you can look at. Or, of course, you can always leave me a comment down below. I respond to just about all my comments, and I'm always happy to help. Leave me your feedback. Let me know what kind of build you're using, if you like Argenta as a character, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Take care.